I happen to think there's a gay mafia in hip-hop.
Right.
Not rappers. You know, the editorial presidents of magazines, the PDs at radio stations.
Fat Joe once laughed and said on camera, "The gay mafia runs hip-hop." Fast forward, now he's smack in the middle of a federal RICO case, accused of running some wild cult setup with blackmail, hidden cameras, and disturbing allegations involving minors. And here's the kicker. The person suing him claims Joe learned it all from Diddy himself. And trust, the more you dig, the darker it gets. Same lawyers, same courtroom, same disturbing patterns, same silence from everyone around. But here's where the whole thing flips on its head. 'Cause long before any of this made headlines, Katt Williams was already throwing warning shots. On Joe Rogan's podcast, Katt laid it all out. Rituals, coded symbols, be fat, handlers, dresses, and the whole twisted trans agenda, all laid out like an ancient master plan. Katt said the elites were doing it bold, right in our faces. So now, look back at Joe. The once mouthy Bronx OG suddenly turned silent. Same shady players, same script playing out again. And if Katt was right about everything else, maybe this ain't just karma. Maybe it's straight up punishment. It all exploded with a bombshell that hit like a thunderclap, and most folks still don't know what to make of it. On Club Shay Shay, Katt didn't play nice. He kicked the door off the hinges. When he said, "Did he be wanting to party?" It wasn't just some slick joke. He was exposing something deeper, a full-blown structure of power, influence, and control. But here's what flew over most people's heads. That clip wasn't just about Diddy. That was Katt firing off his first warning shot, a message to the rest of Hollywood that the so-called gay cabal wasn't finished yet. Katt's always been the funny guy with too much truth tucked in his punchlines. But in 2024, he dropped the jokes and stepped into open war. And the one theme he won't let go? Those Hollywood rituals. He kept bringing up BET symbolism. The dresses forced on straight black men, the obedience, the submission. To Katt, these weren't just weird Hollywood trends. They were straight-up initiation rites, psychological branding tactics to break folks down and turn them into controlled puppets. And now, go all the way back to Fat Joe. In 2011, he's on Vlad TV, chillin', talking casually, but drops a bomb when he says there's a gay mafia in hip-hop. At the time, everyone laughed it off, said Joe was just stirring up drama. But today, that same Joe is being hit with a lawsuit so massive, it could end everything he built. And nobody's laughing now. Joe spoke some words that might have just put a massive bullseye on his back. Back then, Joe was untouchable, a certified Bronx icon. But that one moment changed everything. And guess who was watching? Katt Williams. He later confirmed there's a hidden ceiling in the industry, a glass wall guarded by the elite, where you don't move up unless you submit. And that gay mafia Joe talked about? It's deeper than just identity. It's about allegiance. It's about control. It's about who owns your silence and who's got the dirt. That's the real game. Then Joe dropped that comment and everything shifted. And now things get real disturbing. For years, folks said Katt was just talking in conspiracy code. But if you go back and piece together all his interviews and rants, you'll see a pattern that's too clear to ignore. Bet awards, occult-like symbols, duality, and the flipping of masculine energy into submission. It's not just image play. It's deep. It's ritualistic. It's strategic. And guess who became part of it? Fat Joe. The man who once called out the gay mafia ended up getting embraced by that very machine, but not in some casual, harmless way. It was like a full switch-up. Now back to Katt. Here's something wild. A fan spotted something during the Club Shay Shay interview. Katt was rocking a ship's helm pendant on his chain. Not just some flashy piece, that wheel symbol is ancient. It means direction, control, staying on course even when chaos hits. In Buddhist teachings, it's the wheel of Dharma, representing purpose, truth, and right action. So Katt showing up with that around his neck, that wasn't just for show. It was a statement. Spiritual warfare, loud and clear. While the world's getting tossed around like a ship lost at sea, Katt's over here gripping the wheel saying, "I'll steer my own course." When you line that symbol up with everything he said about industry control, it all connects. This wasn't random. This was coded, calculated. And on Joe Rogan, he went even further, warning that the trans movement wouldn't just stay political, it would get pushed across every media outlet. Full force, no breaks. This ain't about celebrating diversity, it's about stirring up straight chaos and confusion. Hollywood's pushing a gender blur that's not about freedom, it's about control. When everything's unclear, who you are, how you fit in, it's easier for the system to mold you into whatever they want. That's not progress, that's manipulation. And that BFAT symbolism everyone keeps brushing off? It's deeper than just creepy goat statues or weird award show moments. It stands for the fusion of male and female, the full erasure of natural order. It's not just visual, it's spiritual, psychological, and intentional. Katt didn't sugarcoat it. He tied all of this to a hidden group pulling strings in the background. He said it plain: the gay cabal decides who wins, who eats, and who gets shut down. Now let's talk about Fat Joe again. Once upon a time, Joe was bold, talking openly about gay control in the industry. But fast forward, he's gone quiet, dead quiet. Suddenly, he's pushing political narratives and tangled up in lawsuits that mirror the exact same patterns we've seen take others down. This doesn't feel like a coincidence anymore, it's looking like a correction, a warning to stay in line. Katt never said Joe's name outright, but you didn't have to be a genius to hear the message. If you speak on the rituals, the cabal will come for you. And now, they're at Joe's front door. A massive RICO lawsuit just dropped in federal court, and it's ticking every box Katt already warned us about. According to the docs, Joe didn't just act messy, it was systematic. Emotional manipulation, controlling behavior, carefully crafted image on the outside, while chaos was running wild behind closed doors. It even involved underage girls, according to the filing, all while making sure the cameras were rolling to keep things locked down. This wasn't just drama, it was control, and it was planned. Weird part? Katt low-key called every piece of this years ago. But here's where things get real twisted. This lawsuit against Fat Joe, it reads like someone copy-pasted from the Diddy RICO playbook. Enter Terrence Dixon, Fat Joe's right-hand man for years, hype man, assistant, business partner, inner circle, the whole nine. But now, he's the one filing this federal RICO case. And this ain't just about unpaid checks. Dixon's alleging betrayal, blackmail, sexual exploitation, and even participation in some of the acts. But the real headline here, it's not just what he's saying, it's how he's saying it. He's structuring the whole case under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO. That's not for petty beef. That's for crime families and powerful criminal networks. So now the question is, why are celebrities being painted like crime bosses? Because these setups are starting to look like full-on empires of corruption. Dixon says Fat Joe built a layered web of shell companies, artists, employees, all allegedly involved in shady stuff like theft, threats, manipulation, and media smokescreens. Sound familiar? That's because Cassie, Rodney, Lil Rod Jones, Don Montgomery, they all said almost the exact same things about Diddy. Let's break it down side by side. Financial grooming? Lil Rod said Diddy spoiled him with gifts, cash, and housing, just to keep him compliant. Dixon says Joe promised him business ownership, then ghosted him, forged contracts, and put puppet names on the paperwork, surveillance and coercion. Lil Rod claims Diddy had him followed by security and watched by cameras. Dixon says Fat Joe used bodyguards to intimidate, and even showed up for what was supposed to be a friendly house visit that felt more like a mob-style shakedown. Abuse of power? Cassie said Diddy used his fame to lure and control younger women. Dixon says Fat Joe surrounded himself with underage girls, manipulated rising artists, and played the mentor role just to cut everyone out of the money. But this isn't just about private behavior, it's about the media helping to hide it all. The industry played along, kept things clean in the public eye, and silenced anything that got too close. Because that's the real job of the cabal. It doesn't have to shut everyone up, just enough people to protect the system. And here's the cold truth. These lawsuits, they're not just about individuals. They're exposing a whole system hiding in plain sight. One built on fear, manipulation, and dirty secrets, wrapped up in fame, money, and a shiny public image. And every time someone speaks out, they either vanish from the spotlight or end up in court fighting for their life. Look at the pattern. Speak out, get punished. Go along, get rewarded. It's a sick cycle. Katt Williams warned it was all ritual-based. The humiliation, the silence, the forced transformations. And now, we're watching that same blueprint play out in real time with Fat Joe. But here's where things hit even harder. Dixon wasn't just some outsider throwing stones. He was inside the house. He knew the layout, the rooms, the whispers. He watched Joe build his empire, and now he's tearing down the walls. He said this wasn't just about betrayal, it was about being used, watched, and threatened. Dixon claims Joe would act like a big brother in public, but behind closed doors, it was manipulation, lies, and a constant need for control. Even when Dixon tried to leave, the intimidation followed. He says Joe made sure he knew, "You're not going anywhere without my say-so." That's not a friendship, that's a trap. And let's not forget the women caught in the crossfire. Dixon's lawsuit says underage girls were brought around, groomed with promises of fame and music careers only to be used and discarded like props. That mirrors exactly what Cassie accused Diddy of, turning young hopefuls into puppets in a private circus run by power-hungry men. And who helped cover it up? According to Dixon, the label execs, managers, and PR reps all played their part, staying quiet, spinning stories, and keeping the money machine running smoothly. Just like in Diddy's world, it was all about silence, secrecy, and survival. But here's what's wild. All of this was out in the open if you were paying attention. Fat Joe went from calling out the gay mafia to fully aligning with it. From exposing the gatekeepers to becoming one. Katt tried to tell us. He said it wasn't just about fame, it was about submission. And if you don't play along, they break you. Now, with the RICO case closing in, Fat Joe's entire empire could collapse. This ain't just legal drama. This could be the start of Hollywood's next implosion. And if Dixon's telling the truth, then Fat Joe's not the only one with something to hide. There might be more names about to fall. And this time, the cabal might not be able to keep the lid on it. And here's where it really gets wild. Because if Fat Joe's empire starts crumbling, he might not go down alone. People in this game don't fall quietly. When the pressure hits, somebody always flips. If Dixon's spilling this much already, imagine what else he knows, or what Joe might expose if cornered. That's the part the industry fears the most, the domino effect. One name leads to another, one lawsuit opens the door to 10 more. And when people start pulling receipts, old clips, hidden footage, burner phones, the whole game changes. And guess who's been warning us about this collapse for years? Katt Williams. Everyone called him crazy, washed up, paranoid. But now, everything he shouted about, from forced submission to industry puppeteering, it's all lining up like clockwork. He told us about the rituals, the dress code, the silent agreements, the glass ceiling. Now look around, it's all right there. Even the timing is crazy. Diddy's cases explode, then suddenly Fat Joe's name gets dragged into the same mess. Same accusations, same fear tactics, same eerie silence from the mainstream media. It's like these dudes all read from the same rulebook, and now it's backfiring. Let's not forget, the government doesn't slap RICO charges on just anyone. That's reserved for mobsters, cartels, and deep-rooted crime rings. So if these artists, these icons, are getting hit with RICO, that means someone up top believes this is organized, not random. Coordinated, not chaotic. Which raises the question, how many more of your favorite celebs are in on it? Think about how quiet certain people have gone. Big names who used to post daily suddenly gone ghost. Others who used to speak out now moving carefully, only saying what the machine allows. That's fear. That's control. That's the power of the cabal Katt tried to warn us about. And here's what's even creepier. The public image never slips. These guys still show up in suits, smiling at galas, rubbing shoulders with politicians, acting like they're role models. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the lawsuits are stacking and the accusations keep getting darker. So now we gotta ask, how deep does this go? Because if Dixon's claims are just the beginning and Katt's clues were the map, then Fat Joe might just be the next piece in a much bigger puzzle. And this puzzle? It's about more than music. It's about power, silence, and what happens when someone finally decides to break it. All the system needs is control over the cameras. Once they own the lens, they control the narrative. And guess who's been orbiting around Fat Joe these past few years? None other than Kamala Harris. Joe publicly backed her campaign, spoke out on justice issues, and was seen rubbing shoulders at high-level political fundraisers. Now add in Rock Nation. Joe's popped up at several Jay-Z-linked events. He's been a regular at Clive Davis's industry-packed parties. And of course, he's been moving through Revolt-affiliated circles, staying close to some of Puff's former allies. Same stylists, same handlers, same PR teams. So now you're telling me he's in all the same rooms with all the same execs, facing similar lawsuits. And it's just a coincidence? Yeah, right. But here's the part nobody's talking about. When Joe's lawsuit dropped, there wasn't even a whisper from mainstream media. No press storm, no publicist spin cycle, no interviews. Silence. Why? Because this story wasn't supposed to make noise. Unlike Diddy, Joe still has cover. The cabal hasn't tossed him aside yet. Maybe it's 'cause he stays obedient. Maybe he knows better than to speak out. Or maybe, just maybe, he's being used as a slow-motion warning. But behind the scenes, let's talk about the man who cracked this wide open, Terrence Dixon. Dixon ain't just some bitter ex-friend. This man was inside Joe's world for over 2 decades. He had the passwords, the travel receipts, the backstage keys. He helped run Terror Squad, handled artist meltdowns, locked in bookings, everything. And now, he's vanished. Socials wiped, videos buried. Media outlets aren't even saying his name anymore. That's not random. That's a cover-up. That's the Diddy blueprint. Erase the threat before the public even knows they existed. When people challenge the structure doesn't just fight, it erases. They don't need to win in court. They just need you to forget the case existed. But here's the twist. Dixon's case is finally starting to bubble up. Not because the media pushed it, but because of timing. Diddy's scandal blew the door open. And Katt Williams? He gave people the language to understand what they've been sensing for years. What once sounded like wild conspiracies now feels like a decoded playbook. So now, the million-dollar question. If Fat Joe once warned us about the same gay cabal and is now being protected by it, is that protection fading? Because the signs are there. He's been way more quiet in public. No interviews, no statements, no lawsuits addressed head-on. And insiders? They've stopped reposting him. His name quietly removed from campaign flyers, charity boards, and brand deals. Even Katt hinted that once your ritual window closes, they either absorb you or sacrifice you. So what happens when they're done with you? Do they leave you to rot in silence? Or do they bury you so deep no one dares ask what happened? We're about to find out. Because let's be real, if these same allegations were made about anybody else, it'd be front-page news on every site, every timeline, every YouTube channel. But with Joe, crickets. Not a BuzzFeed deep dive, not a Rolling Stone takedown, nothing. That's not a coincidence, it's a strategy. When the industry protects someone, they don't just bring in lawyers. They call in the PR assassins, the influencer silencers, the algorithm scrubbers. Compare that to how fast Diddy's name was blasted across headlines. Why the difference? Because Diddy was already disposable. Joe might still be useful. Let's break down the strategy. Look at Diddy. First, he settled things quietly. Then he stepped back from his label, right before it crumbled. A few cases went public, just enough to make it look like consequences were happening. But behind the scenes, the industry spun it like he was just the lone bad guy. Everything else is fine, don't look over here. Now zoom in on Joe. Same story, just a slower rollout. Allegations hit, but Joe kept popping up in public. His team didn't flat out deny it, but they started shifting schedules. Slowly, he faded from the spotlight. No loud statements, no extra lawsuits, just the one from Dixon, who's now being brushed off like he's some desperate nobody. And while all this is happening, Joe's name is being gently removed from upcoming partnerships, programs, endorsements. Quietly, cleanly, it's a digital cleanup happening right in front of our eyes. The only difference? This time, they're doing it with the volume turned all the way down. Probably because Joe still hasn't said the wrong thing. But here's what this really shows. This story was never just about Joe. It's about how this whole machine works. And the only reason we're even seeing it now? Because Katt Williams wouldn't let it slide. Katt doesn't need Hollywood's money, he's independent. Viral, uncancelable. That's what makes him dangerous. Not just to the industry, but to everyone still playing along. Now here's the real paranoia. Is Joe being taken down or being repackaged? Because that's the new move now. They don't always cancel people, they rebrand them. They erased Chrisette Michele for singing at Trump's event, but protected accused abusers for decades. They villainized Kanye, but let Travis Scott rock the Super Bowl. Some get tossed, some get rehabbed. And Joe's case? Still hanging in the balance. Is the cabal testing his loyalty or prepping him for disposal? Whatever happens next, it's gonna expose a lot more than one rapper's fall. It'll show us how far this rot really goes and who else is next in line. But let's not forget where this all started. Terrence Dixon. Right now, Dixon should be viral, on talk shows, doing podcasts. But instead, he's a ghost. And that silence? It's loud, real loud. Some say he cut a deal behind the scenes. Others say he got threatened into disappearing. Because the last person who went up against one of these industry giants, their case vanished, and so did they. If Dixon got forced into silence, if Fat Joe's lawsuit magically disappears, and if Katt's interviews get buried in the algorithm, then guess what? The system wins again. And we'll never hear the full story until the next rapper speaks too loud. But trust, it's not over. Because another name just got pulled into the mix. And unlike Joe, they're not staying silent. They're fighting back. On camera. And what they're exposing might reveal roots way deeper than we thought. And you're not ready for what they just said, or who it points to, stay tuned.